The docking clamps hissed as the shuttle locked into Bay 94B of Ether Academy's central ring. Through the reinforced viewport, Aria Lane caught her first real glimpse of the structure that had loomed in news feeds and cadet dreams across 100 systems. Suspended between twin moons of the planet Taraxis, the Academy resembled a glowing starfish, arms of obsidian metal stretching into the void, each lined with gravity loop rings and quantum simulation chambers. It was intimidating, alien, and breathtaking, exactly what she had trained for. She stood and adjusted the soft fabric of her standard-issue cadet jacket, a dull gray with a single Earth emblem stitched near the collarbone. No rank, no honors. Not yet. Her boots echoed sharply on the metallic walkway as she stepped onto the gangway. Around her, other cadets disembarked, tall Varelians with translucent exoskins, stone-faced Drektari built like tanks, and even a floating Pluxon, humming softly through the air. They glanced at her, some with open curiosity, others with veiled amusement. No one spoke. No one offered a welcome. The reception hall pulsed with holographic banners. Ether Academy Flight Division, where species soar beyond limit. Aria waited in line at the registration console behind a Tharnian, whose wings retracted slowly into his back as he signed in. When it was her turn, she keyed in her identification. A chime sounded, followed by a mechanical voice. Lieutenant Aria Lane, human, Earth Sector, First Cycle Cadet, assigned to Elite Flight Unit, Omega Wing. There was a brief pause. The Tharnian turned his head. His 4 green eyes blinked in visible surprise. He chuckled once, then moved on. "Did I hear that right?" asked another voice. Aria turned. A tall cadet stood behind her. His uniform shimmered slightly, indicating a Drektari biocomposite, a sign of high status. His orange skin was patterned with symmetrical black stripes. His voice was dry and condescending. "You're assigned to Omega Wing?" he asked again. "Yes," she said simply. He let out a short breath. "Omega Wing is the elite of the elite. You must have done something impressive in your little sky world." "I flew," she said. "Better than most." He smirked. "We'll see." She walked past him, refusing to let the smirk stick in her mind. The academy corridors curved in perfect arcs, guiding her toward the accommodation sector. Her assigned room was modest, but it came with a personal interface wall, a gravity-adjustable cot, and a view of Taraxis's glittering gas fields. As she dropped her duffel on the bed, a tone echoed from the wall display. "Orientation briefing in 45 minutes, simulation chamber 12. She had just enough time to unpack her neural sync helmet and check the interface links. Earth tech had always been a step behind the Central Galactic Standard, but Aria's helmet was custom. Her fingers brushed the inside, wired with responsive gel mesh, tuned to her brain's rhythms. She had built it herself. Back on Earth, no one cared. Here, it might be the only edge she had. When she entered the chamber, dozens of cadets were already seated in tiered rows. Each wore their species' preferred flight rig, sleek, armored, scaled, or biobonded. Aria's Earth-grade suit looked plain beside them. The room quieted as a figure stepped onto the central platform. He was imposing, nearly 8 feet tall, with wings folded behind his back like a cloak. His skin shimmered like molten silver, and his voice was the kind that didn't need amplification. "I am Commander Velsha," he said. "Some of you know me. All of you will learn from me. This is Omega Wing. You are here because your species considers you exceptional, not adequate, not promising, exceptional." He turned slightly, scanning the room. His gaze landed on Aria, lingered, and then moved on without a word. "You will compete," he continued. "You will cooperate, but above all, you will fly. We begin tomorrow at 600. Simulation Gauntlet 1. If you are late, you are out. If you crash, you are evaluated. If you survive, then we will talk about piloting." The lights dimmed, and the hologram of the first course appeared, an asteroid maze littered with active decoys and shifting grav fields. Murmurs rippled through the cadets. It was notoriously brutal. "Dismissed," Velsha said, wings flaring once as he stepped off the platform. As the cadets filtered out, Arya felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find the Drektari again. His name tag read, Vor. "Better get some sleep, human," he said. "Tomorrow separates those who fly from those who fall." She stared at him calmly. "Then you'd better hold on tight." He laughed. "We'll see." Back in her quarters, Arya lay on the cot, helmet resting beside her like a silent ally. Her heart beat steadily, not from fear, but from resolve. She had spent her life hearing that humans didn't belong in places like this, that they were soft, that they were slow. But the truth was, humans weren't bred for war like the Drektari. They weren't engineered for reflex like the Varelians. They had to build everything from nothing. That made her dangerous. She closed her eyes and imagined the asteroid field, the unpredictable currents, the collisions waiting in the dark. But in her mind, it became something else, a rhythm, a dance. She didn't need to be faster, just smarter. One mistake, and the galaxy would confirm what it already believed. But if she won, if she even survived, everything would begin to change. Outside her window, the stars moved silently, uncaring and brilliant. Arya reached for the helmet, slid it onto her head, and let the neural gel embrace her thoughts. 1,000 simulations awaited. She would run them all, again and again, until morning, because tomorrow she would fly, and this time the galaxy would watch. The alarm chimed in a low pulse of blue light. Arya's eyes opened before the tone finished. Her neural sync helmet rested beside her, its interface light blinking in standby. She sat up, stretched her arms once, then tapped the panel on the wall to switch the lighting from night mode to full spectrum. The cot lifted and folded into the wall as the room shifted into utility configuration. She didn't eat. Her stomach was calm, but focused. This morning wasn't about comfort. She pulled on her suit, adjusted the glove seals, and lifted the helmet into her hands. The edges of its custom-fitted interior still carried the faint warmth from the simulations she had run through the night. She exhaled once, slid it on, and let it seal. As she stepped into the corridor, the silence was palpable. Most cadets had already headed to the simulation bays. She followed the curved path to Chamber 12, walking past transparent observation tunnels that opened out into the vacuum-lit expanse. Distant stars flickered like whispers. Ether Academy hung between them like a godless cathedral, silent and sacred. The chamber entrance recognized her credentials and hissed open. Inside, the energy was sharp. Dozens of cadets were already in place, some performing warm-up maneuvers in their seats, others syncing their flight rigs with the chamber AI. Above them, the ceiling glowed with tactical overlays. Asteroid clusters rotated in simulated orbit, riddled with grav anomalies, decoy flares, and hostile drones set to random pathing. At the far end stood Commander Velsha. His arms were crossed behind his back, wings at rest. The commander's presence was enough to still all unnecessary movement. His eyes tracked the entrance, pausing briefly as Arya crossed the threshold. "No delays," he said without turning. "Good. Begin your sync." Each cadet's seat lit up with personal interface beacons. Arya moved to her assigned pod, Unit 9. The seat was standard, not the newer haptic model, but she preferred it that way. It meant fewer assistive prompts. She lowered herself into position, locked her boots into the magnetic stirrups, and initiated her neural handshake. Her visor flared once, then faded to black. And then, space bloomed. The gauntlet loaded in under 3 seconds. She was no longer in a chamber. Her interface placed her cockpit inside a dual-engine long-range interceptor, hovering just beyond the asteroid belt. The scale was dizzying. Rocks the size of stadiums drifted through the void, while magnetic storms rippled across grav-sync regions. Each cadet was marked by a faint color trail signature. The objective was simple: navigate the belt, eliminate as many hostile drones as possible, and survive to the checkpoint. Time efficiency, and accuracy were scored. "Begin in 5, Velshaw's voice echoed into every cockpit. "And remember, no resets. You crash, you're done." Arya rolled her shoulders once, fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Her custom layout was faster than standard. She ignored the ambient chatter on the open channel. Some cadets were already betting on who would last the longest. The countdown ended. Her ship rocketed forward with a clean burn, slicing through the dark like a blade. Immediately, several cadets dove to the left corridor of the belt, hoping to avoid early obstacles. Arya pushed toward the center. Her screens lit up with proximity warnings. She didn't blink. The first asteroid passed within 10 meters of her wingtip. She shifted her trajectory using thrust vectoring and rolled her ship into a narrow tunnel formed by 2 rotating rocks. As she exited, her sensors pinged, 2 hostile drones approaching from starboard. She inverted, letting one drone fire and miss before cutting back around with a sharp vector slash. Her plasma bolt landed directly into the drone's sensor hub, disabling it mid-spin. The second she dealt with using a feint and loop, allowing the drone to overshoot before she drilled it clean from below. No wasted energy, no panic. The rest of the cadets were behind her now, not by much, but enough that the command interface marked her as top velocity. She kept her breath steady. Her flight pattern curved into a blind tunnel of ice debris. The temperature differential spiked on her readout, but she used it, shielding herself from drone scanners that tracked heat signature. It was a risk. The exit was narrow. A blinking red indicator flashed on her map, multiple targets converging at the tunnel mouth. 3 drones, armed, coordinated. She tapped the side panel and disabled standard targeting. Manual override engaged. With one hand on thrust control and the other on weapons calibration, she timed the debris movement, waited for the pulse of drone energy signatures, and then fired 3 shots in rapid succession, bouncing them off reflective ice. The blasts didn't hit directly. They didn't need to. The explosion from the ricochet tore through 2 drones. The third clipped debris and spun into her field of fire. Another pulse, another shot. Gone. The AI registered her score. She was climbing. Fast. The comms crackled. "Unit 9, redirect to Sector Delta 4, came Velshaw's voice. Manual grav anomaly engaged. She adjusted course instantly. Her screen updated with a new objective point. The route required flying into a raw grav well, a distortion sphere created by collapsing particles. Ships caught inside often lost nav stability, but Arya wasn't flying by nav. She flew by instinct. As she approached the distortion, her ship began to tremble. The frame groaned. Any AI assistance would have dropped throttle. She increased it. The sphere warped around her cockpit. Controls went semi-responsive. Her ship drifted slightly off axis. She let it. She stopped fighting the pull and instead aligned with it, using microbursts of reverse thrust to slingshot into its edge. For a brief moment, the simulation display pixelated, unable to render her exact trajectory in real time. Then she broke through. Silence followed. The hostile zone cleared. One by one, cadets began to exit the simulation. Crashed, scored, failed. Only 4 remained now. Arya, Vor, a Varelian with unmatched peripheral reflexes, and a Pluxin who used sonar mapping in place of vision. Arya's final course displayed a tight corridor of satellite wreckage under constant micrometeor bombardment. It was meant to simulate a failed orbital defense grid. No gravity, no shields. She kept her ship low, flying belly to the wreckage. Static charges flashed around her, scattering her sensors. She switched to manual proximity and adjusted for impact frequency. The others struggled. One veered too high and clipped a panel, spinning into an unrecoverable roll. Another tried to brute force a path and was overwhelmed by the meteor impacts. Only Vor remained. He was good, aggressive. His Drektari ship was bulkier, shielded, and fitted with high-output thrusters. He moved fast, like a sledgehammer through glass. But he didn't adapt. In the final stretch, Vor surged ahead, but ignored a floating cluster of heat-primed debris. His shields registered too late. The simulation flagged catastrophic failure. Eliminated. Arya coasted through the last corridor, clean and silent. The simulation ended. Inside Chamber 12, the pods hissed open one by one. Cadets stepped out, some sweating, some furious. Commander Velshaw stood silent. When Arya removed her helmet, her breathing steady, the room was quiet. The commander finally spoke. "One passed," he said. He turned toward Arya, his eyes unreadable. "Unit 9, top marks in all categories." No applause, just silence. Then one cadet, silent, gray-skinned, and from a species Arya didn't know, nodded. Another cadet saluted her. The tide was shifting. Arya didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just walked out, helmet in hand. Tomorrow, the real challenges would begin. The data reports were still compiling on the central flight servers when Arya stepped into the tactical briefing room. The overhead lights cast a sterile white glow, reflecting off the black glass table at the room's center. She sat alone, her helmet beside her, visor turned downward. Her hands remained folded, knuckles pale from residual adrenaline. The simulation had ended, but its consequences were just beginning to ripple through the ranks. The door opened sharply behind her. She didn't turn. Footsteps, 3 pairs, entered. She recognized the commander's gait instantly, precise, deliberate. Velshaw moved with the authority of someone who had nothing left to prove. The other 2 were unknown. She listened to their breathing, the hesitation in each step. One was Drektari. The other, likely Varelian, based on the faint hum of respiratory modulation. "Cadet Lane," Velshaw began, his tone neutral. "Remain seated." She did. "This is Lieutenant Drovek of Tactical Oversight and Specialist Rune from Simulation Integrity. They've reviewed your gauntlet performance." The Varelian, tall and translucent, stepped forward. His voice was soft, melodic, but held weight beneath it. "We've never recorded a neural sync adaptation curve like yours. Not from a human. Not from anyone." She met his gaze. "Is that a problem?" "No," he said slowly. "But it raises questions. Your reaction timing inside the Grav anomaly, specifically during Sector Delta 4, exceeded the simulation's anticipated input lag. The system didn't fail. You bypassed it." "I flew the pattern," she said. "The anomaly was just physics." Drovek stepped closer, arms crossed. That kind of improvisation is usually the result of years in active deployment. You're fresh from a backwater system that just recently met galactic standard. Arya didn't flinch. Backwater systems produce desperate pilots. Velshaw raised one hand slightly. "That's enough." Silence fell. "Your results will stand," he continued. "But tomorrow, you'll face a new module, not a simulation, a real-world gravity drift course aboard the Skyward Array, and you'll fly alone." Arya didn't blink. "Understood." The 2 officers exited quietly. Velshaw remained behind. He studied her for a moment, as if seeing something new. "You can return to your unit." She stood, lifting her helmet in one smooth motion. "I didn't come here to be doubted, Commander," she said quietly. "I came here to fly." "Then you'd better do it better than anyone else," he replied. She left without another word. That evening, the Skyward Array loomed against the stars like a broken spear, its jagged ring of microgravity anchors stretching around a central launch spindle. It was an old structure, used during the border conflicts centuries earlier, now converted into a testing gauntlet for experimental maneuvering drills. Few cadets flew it. Most weren't trusted. Arya stood in the hangar bay as engineers prepared the solo ship, a stripped-down interceptor with no automated assist, no deflector shields, and a manual-only nav core, the kind of craft no sane pilot would ever touch in open space. She ran her gloved hand along the side hull. The metal was scarred, unpolished, raw. She liked it. The technician approached. "All set, Lieutenant. Comms locked to short range. You'll get updates from the control tower only if you survive the first 15 minutes. "Comforting," she replied dryly. She climbed into the cockpit, sealed the hatch, and powered the core manually. The vibration beneath her seat was visceral. Real thrusters, real danger. Control to Arya Lane. You are cleared for launch. Simulation parameters disabled. You're on your own out there, she launched. The first few seconds were stable, the ship coasting between the outer rings of the skyward array. Then the grav sling anchors activated. Pockets of distorted mass bent her trajectory in unpredictable curves. The nav core flickered. Data corruption by design. She flew by instinct again. Every rotation of the array added complexity. The inner ring fired magnetic tethers, each acting as temporary satellites to throw off course predictions. One clipped her wing. Sparks trailed behind her. She pulled up, counter-thrusted, and spiraled through an artificial current of ion debris. No AI could navigate this, not without burning out its core. She trusted the rhythm. 3 minutes in, the power dipped. She manually rerouted through the emergency backup conduit, bypassing the flight AI completely. Her eyes scanned the field. A cluster of obsolete mines activated, their sensors triggered by movement. She slowed her ship, then cut power altogether. For 5 seconds, she floated, dead, invisible. The mines blinked, then powered down again. She kicked the engines back to life and bolted through. 10 minutes. The inner drift corridor loomed ahead. Debris from ancient conflict drifted at lethal speeds. She adjusted pitch, rolled to the right, then dropped belly down into a dense, needle-sharp wreckage path. Alarms screamed. She ignored them. One bolt of steel clipped the side panel, but she stabilized before it could rip through her thruster mount. She counted her heartbeat. Steady. 14 seconds to exit. She twisted into a gap between two rotating hull fragments. One scraped her underbelly. She fired her left thruster and slid through the final loop just as the ring collapsed inward behind her. 15 minutes. The ship cleared the array. Her panel lit green. Control to Lane, the voice came. You've completed the drift gauntlet. No recorded damage to core systems. One scratch to your pride, or to our sensors. Hard to tell which. Arya smiled for the first time. Returning to dock, she said. When she stepped out of the cockpit and onto the deck, the hangar was quiet. Only Velsha stood there, arms behind his back, expression unreadable. Why did you disable your navigation? It was lying to me, she said. He studied her. You've earned a rare thing, cadet. What's that? A second chance to fail. She tilted her head. I'll pass again. Perhaps. Tomorrow, you fly against me. She raised an eyebrow. Directly? In front of the wing, he confirmed. No sim, full grav, weapons on stun. You win, you get command of your own squad formation. You lose, you stay a shadow. She nodded slowly. What happens if I surprise you? You won't. She stared at him a moment longer, then walked past. Back in her quarters, she didn't run simulations. She didn't study weapon loadouts or memorize his past patterns. She lay on her cot, helmet beside her, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she wouldn't just prove she could survive. Tomorrow, she would prove that the sky, no matter the gravity, was hers to command. The announcement came at 0600, transmitted across every cadet interface on the flight deck. A single line, with no context and no ceremony. Omega Wing, live engagement simulation, Lane versus Commander Velsha, 0900, observation mandatory. By the time Arya reached the hangar, the observation decks were already filling. Cadets from every wing, officers from auxiliary divisions, even civilian engineers found seats behind the impact-reinforced glass. The atmosphere was electric, whispers moving like current. A human cadet, still in her first cycle, was set to fly against a legend. Some watched with anticipation. Many expected to see her destroyed. Arya walked to the prep bay where her ship waited, an updated interceptor, custom-fitted with manual override capabilities and inertial dampening recalibrated to her physiology. She performed her pre-flight checks methodically. Her fingers moved with the same rhythm as her heartbeat, clean, controlled, deliberate. The suit sealed around her wrists and ankles. The neural sync helmet clicked into place with a quiet hiss. She didn't glance toward the other end of the hangar, where Commander Velshaw stood beside his own craft, a sleek predator painted in obsidian black. The design was Drektari, a ship that responded almost as fast as the thoughts of its pilot, built for violence and intimidation. He had flown it in real wars. It still bore the scars. She climbed into her cockpit and strapped in. Her visor lit up with a direct link feed, velocity indicators, relative target distance, kinetic discharge thresholds. Stun weaponry had been authorized, but full-speed pursuit and aerial takedown were permitted. No assists, no shields. Live environment. Her comm line cracked open. Unit 9, this is Control, came the voice of Specialist Rune. Engagement will begin at the signal. Objective: disable or outmaneuver the opponent. Scoring will favor tactical ingenuity, not brute force. Arya said nothing. She felt the ship lift under her, suspended in the launch cradle. The space outside the hangar opened, an enormous spherical arena built into the side of the Academy's ring, filled with simulated terrain, jagged rock formations, plasma storms, electromagnetic fog, a theater of chaos. Begin in 10, the command rang out. Across the space, Velsha's ship hovered motionless. He was waiting. Arya's eyes narrowed. 5, 4, 3. Her fingers gripped the throttle. 2, 1. Engage. She launched into a lateral dive, dipping below a jagged ridge and immediately rolling into a hard spiral to force distance. Velshaw did not pursue immediately. He ascended, took position above, and scanned for movement. She dropped low again, hugging the terrain and using the storm haze to break his visual. A high-pitched tone in her headset warned her of a lock. She killed speed instantly, pulling into a vertical climb and launching flares. The shot passed behind her, detonating against a rock spire. He had moved. She twisted hard to the right and caught his silhouette flashing through a plasma surge. He was fast, too fast for her to fight directly. She changed strategy. Instead of fleeing, she turned toward the storm core, an unpredictable region filled with static discharges and magnetic debris. Flying through it was suicidal. She dove in. Her ship shook violently, but she kept control by cutting lateral thrusters and letting the electromagnetic current pull her along. On her screen, Velsha paused. He hovered at the edge of the storm. She had baited him. The moment he committed, Arya reversed thrust and dove under a fractured satellite wreck. Her sensors lost track of his position until a warning light screamed. He was behind her. He had taken the bait, and he was hunting. The lock tone returned, and this time she had no cover. She spun her ship into a downward roll, then cut all engines. Her vessel began to free fall toward the simulation floor. At the last second, she fired a reverse burn, flipping her orientation and sliding along the surface, skimming metal just above the crash threshold. Velsha followed. He matched her turn, dropped in behind her, and opened fire. She weaved left, right, up, down, evasive but unarmed. Her rear shields flickered under the strain, even in stun mode. She couldn't keep running. She initiated a hard climb into a rising thermal column, one of the artificial pockets designed for turbulence. Her ship jerked upward. She flipped the targeting system to passive and routed energy to her manual control. As Velshaw climbed behind her, she made her move. She cut power. Her ship stalled mid-air. Velsha, unable to slow in time, overshot her position. In that half-second window, she powered up, activated her coil launchers, and fired both stun charges directly into his aft propulsion. One missed. The other struck home. Velsha's ship lurched, twisted, and dropped, engines sputtering. Arya didn't chase. She rose above him, holding altitude, watching as his vessel dipped into a slow descent and steadied itself only meters above the arena floor. He regained control, but the round was over. The lights in the arena dimmed. "Engagement complete," came the voice over comms. "Winner, Unit 9. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Arya's screen lit with a new message. Command access granted. Formation leader, provisional status. She landed on the platform and opened the canopy. The observation deck was dead silent. The cadets who had come to witness her failure now stared through the glass with unreadable expressions. Commander Velsha approached her ship alone. She climbed down and removed her helmet, meeting him face to face. He studied her for a long time, not with anger, with something else. "You disobeyed tactical doctrine," he said quietly. "I adapted," she replied. "You flew into the most volatile region of the arena. You hesitated." He nodded once. "Congratulations, formation leader." She said nothing. She didn't smile. He turned to walk away. She called after him. "Why me?" He paused. "Because no one else here flies like the sky belongs to her." Then he left. Later that evening, Arya stood at the edge of the observation deck, overlooking the drifting rings of the academy. Stars stretched endlessly across the void, distant and cold. She felt the ache in her muscles, the silence in her ears after so much noise. The hum of engines still lived in her bones. She had outflown a war hero. She had proven herself before the galaxy's finest, but none of it changed her goal. This wasn't the end. This was just the first time they looked at a human and saw something other than a fluke. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin, not in simulations or duels, but in earning every ounce of respect she had forced into existence, and she would take it, one impossible flight at a time. The corridor leading to Command Deck 1 was unfamiliar to most cadets. It stretched in a gentle arc along the outermost ring of Ether Academy, past sealed bulkheads, antique plaques, and weathered insignias from centuries of forgotten wars. Arya walked alone, her boots the only sound against the polished alloy floor. Her uniform had changed. The Omega Wing patch was now bordered in silver. Provisional status removed. Command confirmed. She had not requested the promotion. She had not even spoken to anyone since the duel. But the system moved on its own. The logs had been updated. The scores had been reviewed. A human cadet, in her first cycle, had defeated Commander Velsha in live engagement. The council had issued the decision within 24 hours. At the end of the corridor, a pair of massive bronze doors slid open silently. Inside, the room was circular, illuminated by indirect starlight through a transparent ceiling. A single podium stood in the center, facing a semicircle of officers, 3 Varelians, 2 Drektari, 1 Pluxon, and 1 human liaison who barely looked older than Arya herself. Commander Velsha stood at the far end, hands behind his back, wings at rest. The central Varelian rose, a thin figure with filaments of silver light rippling through her translucent skin. "Lieutenant Lane," she began, "you've been summoned not only for commendation, but for transition." Arya nodded once. "I'm listening. Following your simulation scores, combat demonstration, and strategic assessment under live conditions, we have ruled in favor of your appointment as lead instructor of Tactical Flight Module 3. You will take command of 12 cadets from mixed races and systems. Their evaluation will be your responsibility. Your success will be their survival." Arya's face didn't change. "Understood." Another officer, a Drektari with deep facial scarring, leaned forward. "You'll be stationed off-world, in a real conflict zone." That made her pause. "Explain." "Syrian Verge, border sector," the officer replied. "Frequent pirate incursions, low-level insurgencies, tactical testing ground for new graduates. We send provisional units to support planetary militia. The missions are often ignored by higher command, but the stakes are real." "So it's exile," she said flatly. "It's opportunity," the Pluxon added, floating slightly higher. "The kind that only comes after disruption. You are a disruption." She turned toward Velsha. He met her gaze without emotion. "I endorse the assignment." "Why?" "Because if I were your enemy," he said slowly, "I would want you far from my lines. And if I were your commander, I would want you where the next war is already breathing." Arya said nothing for a moment. Then she nodded again. "I accept." She spent the next 3 days in near total silence, preparing her departure. The cadets under her command had already been notified. Most were unknown to her. 1 Drektari, 2 Varelians, 1 human from Europa Station, a pair of Pluxon twins, and 5 others from various outer systems. No one objected to her leadership openly, but she could read it in their posture, in the way their questions were phrased. They weren't afraid of her. They didn't respect her yet, either. They were watching to see if her legend had weight, or if it would dissolve in real gravity. On the 4th morning, before launch, she was summoned to the Founders' Hall. She hadn't been there before. Few had. It was ceremonial, rarely used, mostly forgotten. The walls were covered in polished obsidian panels, etched with names, those who had changed the Academy's legacy. Most had earned the honor through battle, some through sacrifice, a few through scandal. The newest panel was still unlit. An officer guided her to the center of the hall. Behind her, a few hundred cadets stood in rows, silent. Omega Wing was there. Vor was there. The Varelian who had once mocked her stood with folded arms. Even Velsha had taken a place near the back. The commander of the academy, an ancient Drektari with sunken eyes and a voice like crumbling stone, stepped to the front. "There are moments when tradition must bend to merit," he said. "There are systems across this galaxy where humans are still dismissed as primitive, emotional, or undisciplined. And perhaps some of that is true, but Lieutenant Arya Lane has shown that none of it limits greatness." He turned to her. "You will leave the academy. You may never return, but your name will remain here." He gestured to the obsidian wall. Her name appeared slowly, line by line, glowing softly. Lieutenant Arya Lane, Omega Wing, first human to command a flight unit. The silence broke. A single cadet clapped, hesitant, unsure, then another, and another. Soon the chamber echoed with a roar of approval. For a moment, Arya stood in the center of it all, unmoving, absorbing none of it. She wasn't built for applause. When it died down, she turned, saluted the commander, and walked out. The transport ship to Syrian Verge was waiting on Pad 7. As she stepped aboard, her cadets filed in behind her, each quiet, each watching. She sat in the front, her helmet in her lap, her eyes fixed on the void ahead. Velsha appeared just as the hatch began to close. He didn't enter. He simply stood outside and nodded once. She returned the gesture. Then the door sealed shut. The stars turned as the ship slipped into jump vector. The engines rumbled through the hull. Arya sat with her thoughts. Her story had begun in silence. It would continue in noise and chaos and challenge. She had no illusions about the battlefield awaiting her. She would lose people. She would bleed. She might not return, but she would fly. And in doing so, she would make space for others to rise. By the time the ship reached Syrian orbit, her name had already begun spreading in back channels and encrypted cadet feeds. A new phrase had surfaced: the girl who outflew Velsha. It didn't matter to her, because she wasn't chasing titles. She was chasing sky, and she had no intention of ever landing.